Mike's on the roof.
What just happened?
Brandy, stay back.
You wanna come out and play?
Hello, welcome to Oh the Horror. I'm your horror daddy, Curtavius, and I don't know what warrants being buried alive more, calling rural people backwoods or calling haunted houses haunts. That's a vague reference to the movie that we're going to be reviewing today. It's called The Houses That October Built. And I'm going to be honest with you. There's a reason why I chose this for the very first episode of the podcast. It is one of my favorite movies that I found by accident. And I really think that if you don't know anything about this movie and you go into it blind, you're going to have an incredible time. This movie debuted in 2014. It is a found footage film, which means the likes of your Paranormal Activities, the Blair Witch, anything that looks like someone recorded something on a VCR. That's what a found footage film generally goes about looking like. If you had a chance to see the excellent Late Night with the Devil that came out earlier this year, that is also a found footage film. So, with that being said, because it came out in 2014, it was toward the end of that found footage era, so a lot of people were kind of starting to not necessarily be burnt out, but they were looking at other versions or other types of horror movies to look at. This movie was directed by Bobby Rowe, and it was written by Zach Andrews, Bobby Rowe, and Jason Zada. This was the directorial debut of Bobby Rowe. He hasn't done a full-length feature film since this. I correct myself. He did do a Houses October Build Part 2. But this has been the only thing that he's done full-length feature-wise. He did do one short film, and it's called, I believe, Isolation. And the music for the film, excellent. As far as the opening credit scene and the end credit scene, which I won't spoil that for you. I will tell you guys a little bit about the podcast and the way the structure goes. I'm going to go over a spoiler-free first section of the podcast where I tell you a little bit about the movie, how I feel about the movie, and then we'll get into spoilers after that. So do know that I will let you know when we break into spoilers, just in case you do want to go watch this thing blind and really get that very good experience. But other than that music in the opening scene and a couple of scores that happen when they're in some of the haunted houses, there's nothing really special to write home about as far as the music and the score and the soundtrack goes for this movie. As far as kills go for the movie, there isn't a on-screen kill. They did stick I like that they stuck to the concept of a found footage film where you wouldn't see a lot of the kills. Unless the camera fell perfectly, you wouldn't see a kill in most found footage films. So I really did enjoy that. There is one at the end that is not necessarily a kill, but it is what I consider the top horror. It is one that I consider the scariest moment of the film. It is the top horror moment of the film. And it doesn't happen until the end of the movie. But what that actress does, what Brandy does at the end of the movie to really, really display fear and paranoia and the, oh no, what have I gotten into? It is excellent. She does a great job in really purveying how scary that situation would actually be. I can feel her fear just from the facial expressions that she makes in those brief few seconds. So again, like I said, man, I highly recommend this movie. But when I say highly, I do mean I highly recommend this movie for a first-time watch. For me, I very much enjoyed it, so it makes it easy for me to watch it every October. Every October, this is one of those movies that stays in my rotation. But I understand for a lot of people it may not be the case. But your first time watching, you're going to have a blast. When this movie came out in 2014, like I said, it was at the end of the found footage time frame. So honestly, the found footage time frame, it probably found its end prior to 2014. but this movie still holds its own. Now, one of the reasons why I was probably forgotten, a lot of iconic movies came out in 2014. We had started to begin the growth of the Conjuring in their universe. So Annabelle debuted in 2014. It Follows debuted in 2014. The Taking of Deborah Logan, Ouija, a horror movie that is highly recommended by so many people that I have to watch this week. You guys will be getting this podcast on Halloween. I am recording it a few days prior to Halloween, so the next movie I'm about to announce, I'm watching before then. But it is A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. I hear great things about the movie, so I have to see that one. Also, As Above, So Below came out that year, and we begin to see the switch in this thing called elevated horror. And so many people really enjoyed elevated horror to the point that they begin to just to crap on anything else. Slashers and Gorefest weren't great movies because it didn't focus on trauma and grief, right? But that horror fans know that there's a place for all of these movies. But elevated horror is great. And when you talk about elevated horror or psychological horror, one of the movies that always comes to mind is a movie that debuted in 2014, and that's The Babadook. These are the movies that they had to compete with when they debuted in 2014. So it's pretty easy to get lost in the shuffle. Another movie that came out in 2014 that got lost in the shuffle that we will cover is called Last Shift. Incredible movie. But carrying on. When it comes to enjoyment factor and rating of movies, I like to stick at a 5. I don't like the 10 scale. I really like the 5 scale. The 5 scale really makes you hone in your score, I feel like. I feel like the 10 scale makes it easy for you to maybe it's kind of good, maybe it's not. I think the 5 just makes it makes it more absolute. Yeah. Absolute. Yeah, it makes it more absolute. So with that, I would like to say that I give this movie 3 out of 5 stars. My initial was 3.5, but I have to take that down. I'd say it's a 3-star movie. Definitely worth a rewatch, but the initial first watch for anyone, you're gonna have a good time.
And that's not just a prediction. That is a spoiler.
If you didn't understand what was just said, we're now entering the spoiler zone. That's right, it's spoiler time. Now we're going to talk about the movie in a whole. So we're going to go by the movie scene by scene, almost scene by scene, not fully scene by scene, but we will cover the movie start to end. We start with our characters who are Brandy, Zach, Bobby, his brother Mikey, and Jeff. These guys get together, they rent an RV, and decide that they are going to travel across the U.S. and look for the scariest haunted houses that they could find. The scariest haunted houses there is. They are looking for the most extreme haunted houses in America. I think one of the things I really liked about the beginning of the movie is a lot of the footage when they're on the road, you can tell a lot of that footage is all in Texas. And it's really all in Austin and in the Waco area, which I found funny because in the opening scenes when they're partying, they're getting ready to go out and do the hunt, and they're starting to document it, and they're at a bar called Cowboy Palace in Tyler, Texas. Tyler, Texas is a real city. It is where I'm from. But the bar that they were in was Jackalope in downtown Austin on 6th Street. And as you watch them party and it shows more, you'll notice like, oh, that is 6th Street. The fun fact, the XXX sign you see is from the Dreamers in Hillsboro, Texas. And yeah, so a lot of this happened throughout Texas. And if anyone knows any more areas that they had in Texas that are watching this video, I would love for you to drop it in the comments, because there's a lot of other areas. I'm like, I kind of feel like I know where that is, but I don't know for sure. But the next day, and I really like, they do a great job of storytelling because they party that night. And the next day, they're Mikey is Bobby's brother. Mikey's my favorite character. Mikey does not, Mikey does what Mikey wants. He is that annoying best friend that everyone has. He is the protector, but also the person that you're like, oh God, Mikey's here. So uh, Mikey starts out, he picked up a girl from the bar the night before, and they're like, hey, buddy, we need you to be serious. And Mikey's like, I will. This, in about 3 minutes, just let this lady get dressed and leave out of here. And they do a pretty good job of showing them setting up all of the cameras. This is a found footage film. So it's supposed to be just found footage. So they do a great job of showing us that he's setting up cameras in different corners of the RV, on top of the RV. So that doesn't lead to plot holes later, which is a very good job for someone directing their first movie, I feel. So they're on the road and they're going to these haunted houses. And like you would expect, they run into a lot of there's a lot of convicted, like not convict, yeah, there's a lot of convicted felons that work in haunted houses, believe it or not. And they actually interview a lot of them. Some of the interviews that they have in this movie, I think it's interesting because they initially did a real document. They initially did a real uh, hmm. They initially did a real documentary that covers haunted houses. And some of those interviews actually made it into the movie. Talked about real things, like where someone hung themselves at a haunted house and people thought it was a part of the show. So he just hung there all night and he had accidentally forgot to put the harness in. So he literally hung himself and a dead body just hung in that haunted house all night. They've also talked about using actual human parts for some of the haunted houses. And these weren't characters for the movie. These were part of the actual interviews that they did when they did the documentary. So there's a lot of interesting things in it like that, as far as different facts and different stories that you can research and find out, oh, that really happened from different haunted houses. And it makes you view going into haunted houses differently. As they're going through the haunted houses, they run into a group of guys that don't like them filming their documentary and trying to steal the show. They do step out of line and kind of climb on top of one of the haunted houses. And this is the first time that they've pissed off some of the haunted house crew. They're sitting in their RV because they do their after action review where they go back to the RV, talk about each one that they were at. And they're sitting in there and they turn the lights on and the main lead guy, which happens to be a clown, love clowns, right? Everyone loves clowns, terrifying. That clown is just sitting there in front of their RV. And these are regular people. So these aren't monsters. This isn't Michael Myers. It's just a guy that works at a haunted house, but just kind of scarier because it's real. And so the guy just kind of stares him down. He doesn't do anything, but you can tell that they really pissed him off. So they keep carrying on. They go to a lot of interesting ones. One of the interesting ones that I find them at is a strip club where all of the girls dress up like zombies. I don't know if that was needed for the script, but it was fun to watch. And also a paintball where they shoot paintballs at zombies. That one looked like fun. And again, I think that one was an actual real one. So yeah, I don't know if the zombie boobs, I don't know if those were real. That could have a double meaning. So yeah, they go to a lot of interesting ones, and they finally get to one with a girl who looks just, it's a very weird looking doll, creepy looking girl that kind of just hisses. And you think nothing of it because they don't make a big deal out of the girl in that moment. But she comes back later on, and the way she comes back is very interesting. Next, they move on to another haunted house where Mikey, our boy Mikey, decides to pull one of the actresses into the RV while everyone else is out at the haunted house. And Mikey's just doing his interview. And they never really show us what happened, but we do know that a guy comes up to them, the rest of the group, later, and he's very pissed because apparently Mikey slept with his sister in the RV, and he knows that they were recording. So they get out of there after almost having a fistfight altercation with this guy, and they move on to the next hunt. Things are going well. Things aren't going bad at all. They're not having a bad day. They get to the next hunt, though. This is where things start to change. This is where we start to see characters from haunts that they've been to already start to resurface, and you start to think like, wait, they're miles away, so how could this possibly be a thing? Well, they're leaving this next hunt, which I believe was the zombie hunt, where they're shooting paintballs at the zombies, and there's a knock at their RV, and it is the doll girl who is there just breathing. And she comes in and she breathes, and then she just goes into this one scene where she just
Can you call somebody or something?
No, for real, is there anywhere we can take you?
So after that, you realize that, okay, these guys are beginning to follow them around. Things are happening. But yet they're still determined to find the scariest haunted house that they could find, or the most extreme haunt. And they hear this thing called the Blue Skeleton, which is a mobile like a pop-up haunted house. And apparently that is the scariest, most extreme thing anyone's ever been to. So they begin seeking the Blue Skeleton. But once they begin seeking the Blue Skeleton, it's almost as if the Blue Skeleton saw them first and started seeking them. Because then all other weird things start happening where they're inside of their RV and someone breaks inside of their RV and records them while they're sleeping and then puts it on the internet. And Mike, Brandy, and Jeff are not feeling it. They want to end it. They want to go home. They feel terrified. Where Zach and Bobby, who have quite the bit of financial investment in this trip, also saw that they were put online and held that secret from everyone else. They did not tell the rest of the group that someone had broken into the RV and recorded them. They just decided to go on with the hunt and try to find the Blue Skeleton. Now, I don't know. I think if my friends did that to me, I don't know if we're friends anymore after that. Like, I don't think we see each other Thanksgiving, you know? So at this point, they're in it. Once the recording happens, they then get the invite to the Blue Skeleton, and they're told to go to New Orleans. And they go to New Orleans, and it's Halloween on Bourbon Street. So you can imagine just how wild that is. Like, there's a lot of crazy stuff happening. And they're trying to find these Blue Skeleton guys, and they end up getting separated, and they end up taking Jeff hostage. They can't find Jeff now. No one can find Jeff. They're freaking out looking for Jeff. They get communication from the Blue Skeleton that we have Jeff. You should meet us. And they give him a meeting place. They go out to meet Jeff. And this is where the movie takes a turn. It had been kind of fun. And it had been kind of jump scare here, jump scare there. But this is where it turned into, this feels dangerous. This feels like something sinister is really going to happen here. So the Blue Skeleton guys grab them up, put them in blindfolds, zip tie them, sit them on a bus, drive them out to, we don't know, some location. And in this location, they separate them all and they take them through the house. And a lot of this part of the movie happens in the dark. where you don't see a lot of what's going on. But it ends with all of the guys supposedly being roughed up to the point to where they're beaten unconscious, and Brandy being stuck in the back of a car. And once Brandy's stuck in the back of the car, I can tell you, in the beginning of the movie, there's a scene of a lady in the trunk of a car, and it zooms in on her face as she realizes, oh God, I'm in the back of a car. This is that same scene. It happens again, which again, I think is very good storytelling for this movie. Especially for a first-time director. I think Bobby Roode did a really good job in tying those parts of the story together. Brandy's in the back of the trunk. They drag her out, and she's eventually buried alive in a coffin. The movie ends the movie ends very abruptly, where a cop pulls up and finds the guys, but they never find Brandy. If you don't do any research, right, and you don't look at what the film is prior, and you go in to watch, for me, the first time I watched it, for me, I was like, is this based on a true story? Like, are they going to find her? Are they just, they're going to get out of the ground now. But they don't. The movie just ends. It just ends. And that's it. That's the movie. So now that we've come to the end of the movie, the question is, and the question that we will ask about every single movie moving forward is it horror? There's a lot of movies that come out and they want to be classified under the genre of horror. And you go, it's not really a horror movie, even though it wants to be. So is The Houses That October Built, Part 1, a horror movie? Is it horror? Yes. I recommend it. You should watch it. Once you do watch it, please jump down in the comments and let me know what you think of it. I picked this movie to be the first, mostly because we will redo this movie again. This podcast will not just be me looking at the screen the whole time. I am still searching for co-hosts, but it was important to me that one, that co-host loves horror movies, that enjoys talking about it. Two, it's important to me that it debuts on Halloween, and I didn't have a co-host. So for you creators out there waiting on certain things, sometimes just publish that shit. But with all seriousness, this will be a movie that we will review. I do want to get to weekly uploads at some point. Probably not right now. I want to wait till I find a co-host. So maybe every 2 weeks we'll get an episode now. There will be other things on the channel like first-time movie reactions. Today will be a first-time movie reaction for Hereditary. I know. I call myself a horror fan. I understand. I waited for this moment. I wanted my first movie reaction to be something that I figured would be very good. So you guys check that out too on the page. I'd like to see you back. We're just going to get better from here. We're going to continue to improve our content and add a co-host, maybe two. A 3-person panel would be great for this. So we'll see how it shapes up. This is here more so for me and those of you that'll be here in 6 months, in a year, in 2 years. This video will be one of those like, oh, remember where we started? So again, thank you guys for sticking all the way through the end of this one. We will see you for the next podcast, and that movie being... Thank you. Keep it spooky.